justice, temperance, wisdom, courage. Applying ancient philosophy to modern times, this is the Sunday Stoic.
I'm Steve, and this is the Sunday Stoic. On today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about possessions. And we've talked about things like this in the past, but following a philosophy is a lot like going to church. There's only about 10 stories to your major religions, and they're recycled over and over again. At least that's how it worked for me. So you hear the same thing at Christmas, the same thing at Easter, the same thing over and over and over again, but you internalize these ideas when you hear them many times. So once again, this show focuses on the writings of the late Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, Musonius Rufus for the most part, and any other tidbits we can find. And we interpret them, we read them, apply them to some topic that may be of concern, something that will help us to live a better life. And then I usually provide a bit of an interpretation of those readings. So if you like the show, you can follow us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. You can email the show at sundaystoic@gmail.com. You can also help out by liking the show and reviewing it on iTunes and iHeartRadio and other platforms. And if you want to read for the show, if you have a favorite reading or you just want to volunteer and I can tell you what to read, you can email me at sundaystoic@gmail.com. Look around you. Think about your day. You're going to run into commercials everywhere you look. Get online. You're going to see ads popping up. Websites like Amazon.com, eBay, stores like Walmart, radio commercials, all these things are trying to convince us that we need more stuff. If we just buy one more thing, we'll be happy. But if you step back for a moment and actually think about the past, you'll know that happiness comes with a purchase. You buy something, you feel pretty good about it, but that soon fades away, either to apathy or worse, regret. We soon forget the things that we once wanted, and sometimes we actually regret their purchase. The Stoics knew this. The Stoics were great observers of human nature, and they had something to say about it. Moral Letters to Lucilius by Seneca. Some arguments in favor of the simple life. The journey showed me this, how much we possess that is superfluous, and how easily we can make up our minds to do away with things whose loss, whenever it is necessary to part with them, we do not feel. The Golden Sayings of Epictetus, number 11. The other day I had an iron lamp placed beside my household gods. I heard a noise at the door, and hastening down found my lamp carried off. I reflected that the culprit was in no very strange case. "Tomorrow, my friend," I said, "you will find an earthenware lamp, for a man can only lose what he has." The Thoughts of Marcus Aurelius, Book 9, number 34. A paraphrase. Our bodies are nothing but bone and dust, subjected to being diseased and eventually to die. What about other things that we admire? Marble stones? Well, they're nothing but pieces of earth. Gold and silver? They are nothing but the feces of the earth. What about fancy clothes? They are nothing but the hair of a silly sheep. And the purple dye? Nothing but the blood of a shellfish. Life itself is only the pumping of blood. In the first reading by Seneca, if you read the entire letter to Lucilius, he says that he's going on a long journey and he's taking minimal equipment with him. He's testing himself. He's got an old cloak, a little bit of food, and a blanket, basically, and an old carriage, and that's all he's taking with him. And he points out in the reading it's easy to get rid of possessions when there's something big at stake. Like if you're in a sinking ship and you have your most prized possessions, maybe it's a suitcase full of money, and your boat is sinking, and there's a life raft, and there's only room for you, not your money. Well, you just throw that money right in the water or let it sink with the ship, but you would not bring it on the boat. You wouldn't die for that money. So it's easy to make these decisions about the worth of external possessions when your life is at stake. But interestingly, he says elsewhere in the letter that he was ashamed when he ran into other people on the road because he knew he was dressed poorly and he was outfitted poorly, and he was worried about what others thought of him. And he admits that it's a good test of how far he has progressed as a Stoic, and it shows him that he has a ways to go yet. So we need to remember that even someone we think of as a pretty good Stoic, Seneca, tested himself and found himself wanting in many areas and needed improvement. We need to work on ourselves so we're not ashamed to live simply. Epictetus tells us a story about how his fancy lamp was stolen. He had a nice metal lamp by the door, and someone broke in and took it. And he tells himself, well, tomorrow I'll go out and buy a cheap lamp. A man can only lose what he has. The more you buy, the more fancy stuff you own, the more you have to lose. And it'd be better not to put yourself in that situation. And in the case of the Stoics, the way the Stoics would view things, Epictetus only lost a lamp, an external thing that he is indifferent to. It doesn't matter how fancy the lamp was, it was just a possession. But the thief, on the other hand, has lost his virtue, he has lost his trustworthiness, and he's the only person actually harmed by this theft. And then Marcus Aurelius tells us to remind ourselves that everything we own, even everything that we are, is just made up of dust and dirt. I mean, think about it. Everything you are and you own is just earth, basically. That new iPhone, it's made up of dead plants that have been refined into plastic and some chunks of earth, pieces of ore that have been refined into some form of electronics. Everything is composed of dust and earth and will return to it over time. So there's two important Stoic viewpoints I'd like to mention here in these readings, directly or indirectly. One, we don't really own anything. We borrow everything. Things come and things go, and we have to be willing to accept that our prized possessions could be stolen at any minute. They are externals. They are not totally in our control. They might be preferred indifference, things we'd like to have, but someone can take them very easily. Our phones, our homes, even our lives are not totally in our power to control. Also, things are constantly changing. Those fancy items that we own are just crushed rock and refined oil, right? Eventually, they're going to break back down to their original components. They're not worth losing our virtue over. We shouldn't lust over physical items. They're nothing but dirt and dust, and mourning them when they're gone is very unstoic. Things are constantly changing. So things break down, things change, things come and things go. We have to acknowledge that that's the way the world works. So we should be more like Seneca and test ourselves. Can we get by without having all the material possessions that the crowds think we need? Sure we can. We don't need that brand new iPhone. You don't even really need a cell phone in most cases, but we all have them. I'm not saying we should ditch them. The Stoics say if you have something, you can enjoy it, but don't go lusting after it and don't mourn its lost when it's gone. So if it's lost, don't worry about it. It was never yours in the first place. But I know that more than likely we're going to be more like Seneca. We can get by with little. We can get by being a minimalist, right? But we often will be embarrassed to do so. We're going to be a little shy to admit it, and people will notice when we have a holy pair of blue jeans on or whatever it may be. But if we focus only on the things we can control and ignore the opinions of the masses, we'll be moving in the right direction. Remember that your possessions are not you. Your possessions are just things you have, and they don't define you. And bear in mind that seeking after new possessions is not the path to happiness. I personally recently bought a kayak. I really wanted it. I spent all this time researching it, which one to get, and I finally bought it. And so far, I have spent more time on the internet researching which one to buy than I've actually spent paddling my kayak around. I'm not going to say it was a terrible mistake. I still want to use it. It's just that I wasn't realistic about how much time I have to go kayaking. I also, a few years ago, bought a very nice guitar, about a $1,200 Taylor acoustic guitar that I thought I really needed, and I like it. It plays beautifully. But about a month after I bought it, I discovered cigar box guitars, which are cheap guitars you make at home, and I've been playing on those more than my $1,000 guitar now. So I have to check my own impulses. I have to say, all right, Steve, do you really need that thing you're thinking about, or are you going to buy it, play with it for a day, and then put it in the corner and seek a new quest? What new item shall I find that I must have? And we need to try to avoid these kinds of habits. And the digital age makes it very easy to be impulsive. But I'm getting better. I think about things more before I buy them. I think about how much I really want that item. What will I really use it for? And sometimes I make myself get rid of 2 items that I already own before I'm allowed to buy a new item. And those sorts of activities help to moderate impulsiveness. Remember, Epicurus said that desire is an infinite horizon. The things we really need are easy to fulfill. Happiness is easy to achieve if you focus on being happy now. But if you put your happiness on something on the horizon always gets further away as you approach, and you'll never reach it. All right, so have a great week. Shoot me an email, sundaystoic@gmail.com. Like us on Facebook. Make sure you check out the older episodes and stay stoic. Carpe diem.